For a text-based visual novel, Run Tavernquest very quickly conveys feelings of friction, miscommunication, authority, and discomfort. It's a game that, on the surface, is about running a game, but very quickly reveals itself to be about the strained relationship between players, systems, and the people who designed them. I want to keep this spoiler light because discovery is a big part of what makes the game work. I won't be discussing endings or late game specifics, only the core dynamics and themes the game explores. At a basic level, Run Tavernquest is a choose-your-own-adventure visual novel where you act as a kind of dungeon master for an old-school text adventure. A character named Steve is playing the game you're running, while a CPU assistant helps manage rules, outcomes, and narrative flow. The CPU often overrides your choices or Steve's, asserting authority over how the game should be played. Steve, meanwhile, simply plays the game as it's presented to him, unaware that there are two intelligences watching him and steering his experience. This creates the core dynamic of the game. Steve behaves like a normal player. He makes assumptions, misunderstands unclear rules, experiments, and sometimes expresses intent in ways that don't line up perfectly with what the system expects. The CPU behaves like a rigid system, one that assumes its rules are obvious, interprets confusion as incompetence, and grows increasingly hostile when Steve doesn't behave the way it thinks he should. You, the real player, sit in the middle. You can enforce the CPU's authority, push back against it, or try to balance fairness with correctness. The game constantly asks how complicit you're willing to be in the way Steve is treated. One of the strongest ideas the game explores is the difference between syntax and intent. Steve's early mistakes are rarely malicious or careless. They're usually the result of uncommunicated rules or assumptions the system never clearly explains. The CPU, however, treats these misunderstandings as failures, often mocking or belittling Steve for not playing correctly. If you've ever heard a developer say, "Players are idiots," or "they don't read," this game understands exactly where that sentiment comes from and why it's flawed. It's not that Steve is incapable of understanding the game. It's that the game hasn't actually taught him how it wants to be played. As the story progresses, something interesting starts to happen. Steve adapts. His mistakes become less frequent. His understanding improves. At the same time, the system begins to show cracks. The CPU starts making its own errors, forgetting to provide necessary information, forcing awkward narrative workarounds, and retroactively patching situations just to keep the story moving forward. The power balance begins to shift. The game becomes less about correcting the player and more about exposing the fragility of the system itself. At its core, Run Tavernquest isn't really about competence. It's about control. The tension isn't between a smart system and a dumb player. It's between rigid authority and unpredictable human behavior. The CPU doesn't value understanding. It values obedience. And when meaning starts to emerge without strict compliance to its rules, the system becomes increasingly unstable. What makes this work is that Steve never realizes anything is wrong. From his perspective, this is just the game that he's playing. When the world responds naturally to his intent, it doesn't feel like a system breaking. It feels like good design. Only the system panics. Run Tavernquest isn't trying to give you answers. It's asking you to sit with a question most games avoid. Who is a game really designed to satisfy? The player or the system that governs them? If that sounds interesting to you, I think this game is absolutely worth your time. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe for more content.